CBS News special report. I'm Tony DeCopel in New York. Back on your screen, coming on the air again with more on that catastrophic bridge collapse in Baltimore, because officials are about to hold a news conference as the sun comes up there in Baltimore and we get a better picture of what remains of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. That is the cargo ship, the Dolly, striking a pillar and the bridge collapsing about 1:30 a.m. local time. We are advised that that principal section of the bridge is now in the water, and the fire department says somewhere between 7 and up to 20 people may be in the water now. Rescue efforts are underway. We're hoping to learn more from this news conference. It's underway now. Let's listen in.
We began to receive indications that a ship may have struck the Key Bridge. We got further information through multiple calls that the Key Bridge, portions of the Key Bridge had actually collapsed. At about 01:50 hours, our first unit arrived on scene and reported a complete collapse of the Key Bridge. We were also given information at that time that there were likely multiple people on the bridge at the time of the collapse, and that as a result, multiple people were in the water. We were able to remove 2 people from the water. One individual refused service and refused transport. Essentially, that person was not injured. However, there was another individual that's been transported to a local trauma center that is in very serious condition. At this time, we have multiple air assets from the Maryland State Police, as well as the Baltimore Police Department, as well as multiple marine assets from around the region, including Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, as well as multiple local and state police agencies, National Resources Police, BPD Special Ops Unit is in here, Maryland State Police is here. We have multiple resources. We are still very much in an active search and rescue posture at this point, and we will continue to be for some time. We have a large area that we have to search. This includes on the surface of the water, subsurface, as well as on the deck of the ship itself. We believe at this point we may be looking for upwards of 7 individuals. That's the latest information we have. However, what I will say is the information that I'm giving you right now is as of right now. That's what we know right now. This is a very large incident. It involves a very large footprint. Multiple agencies are operating. Therefore, information is subject to change as we get more intel and as our crews work through the morning. Over the next 8 to 12 hours, you can expect to continue to see our air and maritime assets functioning out on the water and in the air above. We need to do damage assessment of the ship itself before we can board that ship. And we need to continue our subsurface search, which is including different types of sonar. We have side scan sonar. We have other sonar capabilities here. We have underwater UAVs that we're working with. And throughout the night, we've also been working with infrared technology, both from the air and on the water surface. So I'm going to wrap up here with just saying this continues to be a search and rescue operation. It continues to be a very dynamic operation with multiple local, state, and federal resources involved. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Mayor Brandon Scott.
Thank you, Chief. Everyone, this is a unthinkable tragedy. We have to, first and foremost, pray for all of those who are impacted, those families. Pray for our first responders and thank them, all of them working together, city, state, local, to make sure that we are working through this tragedy. This is an ongoing, active research that we're having right now. We're going to continue, as you heard from Chief Wallace, throughout. As long as we have to be doing that, we will do it. But we have to be thinking about the families and people impacted, folks who we have to try to find and save. This is what our focus should be on right now. And we're going to continue to work in partnership with every part of government to do everything that we can to get us through the other side of this tragedy. And with that, I'll turn it over to County Executive Olszewski.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. I think we all awoke this morning to an unspeakable tragedy. As the mayor indicated, we know that there will be families and individuals impacted by this, regardless of what happens the rest of the way out. So I would just echo the mayor in lifting up prayers for those who are impacted, but also ask that our residents pray for our first responders. They have been on scene since very early in the morning, not only conducting initial search and rescue operations, but planning for additional ones as the sun comes up. And, the work that they do cannot be understated. And I want to just thank them for all that they are doing and will do in the hours and days ahead. We know that we have a long road ahead, not just in the search and rescue, but in the fallout following this. I think we appropriately have our attention on the search and rescue efforts currently, and just here alongside our partners in the city to say that they have our full support, just as we want to thank our state partners for the resources they've offered up, as well as the federal partners who have already reached out. The mayor and I have talked to the governor. We've heard from the Secretary of Transportation. So collectively, we thank everyone for their thoughts, their well wishes. But again, this is a very active situation, and we want to just thank the chief and our teams for all the great work they're doing. And with that, I'll turn things back over to the chief.
Thank you, County Executive Olszewski. We can do some Q&A right now. Now we're just going to go around, have everyone present one question.
Chief, can you tell us where the crew of the ship is? You also mentioned, too, that 2 people were rescued. Who made the first 911 call? And there were reports that it was a crew on the deck of the ship working at that point. Can you confirm any of that information?
The latest information we have on the crew of the ship is that they are still on board the ship. There's been comms between the ship crew and the Coast Guard. So as part of the overall operation, we communicate through the Coast Guard with the ship. And I'm sorry, your other questions?
There were 2 people taken. Who made the first 911 call?
I don't know who made that call yet.
Okay, and were there other workers on the deck of the ship or the deck of the bridge at this point? We had heard that information. Can you confirm that?
We were being told there were workers on the bridge. We have yet to confirm that. We'll work with MDTA to obviously to get that information.
About how many cars were on that ship? Last question. On the deck of the bridge at the time it collapsed. You
don't have a number. I can tell you our sonar has detected the presence of vehicles submerged in the water. I don't have a count of that yet.
Thank you. Next.
Chief, you mentioned upwards of 7 individuals that you're looking for. We've heard reports of as many as 20 individuals. Can you just paint a more clear picture of about how many people actually fell into the water, how many people you might be looking to rescue, and also if you can give an idea of how many vehicles, although you might not have that answer, but really just search and rescue.
Yeah, I'll start with the last one. So I don't know how many vehicles yet. I know that we have detected the presence of vehicles. As far as the number between the 7 and 20, that's been a dynamic count throughout the morning, just given the fact that we haven't yet nailed that number down. We do believe that at least 7 are involved in that, at least 7 at this point.
That fell into the water.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I know you said the crew was accounted for according to Coast Guard on deck. Do we know if any of the crew members were part of these at least 7 people that may have been in the water?
We do not.
Thanks, survivability in waters around this temperatures is not very long. At what point do you shift focus to become more of a start program?
So we'll be guided by our dive teams. We will determine what the temperature of the water is. The other issue that we have out there is this water is current influenced. So right now we think the tide is coming back in. That adds a bit of a challenge to us also. We can certainly dive in these conditions, but we have to take a lot of factors into play, right? The fact that there may be trauma involved, they have been in the water an extended period of time, but also remember we're battling darkness. So, it's quite possible that we may have somebody there that we've not seen yet, and as they work closer to the debris field, they'll obviously make those determinations. But we're going to rely on the experts, which are our dive masters that are here, our dive team, to tell us when they believe we've reached that non-survivability point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Janine?
Chief Wallace, was there any indication that there was a problem on the ship? Was it let in by tugboats at any point during the Mayday? Like anything that can, so far early on, point you to something went wrong?
We do not have that information with regard to the investigation. I would refer that to law enforcement. My focus since 1:40 this morning has been that rescue operation.
So far there's been no indication that any kind of like an emergency dispatch came from that ship beforehand?
I have no information about that, ma'am.
Have you been able to talk to the pilot, the American pilot on that bridge?
The pilot on the vessel?
Yeah.
We have not talked to the pilot on the vessel. The rescue personnel, the rescue operation, we have not interacted.
Just back over here.
What can you tell us about these victims that were moved from the water? Men, women?
I don't have age and...
Sorry, again.
I'm sorry?
Update on the condition as well.
Yeah, I don't have age and gender on either. One patient refused service, right? Really, they weren't injured. The second patient, however, was seriously injured and is at an area trauma center.
Are you including them in the at least seven people?
We don't know yet if they're part of that 7. Okay. The patient is injured severely enough that we've not been able to debrief that patient.
That 7 number, did that come from people witnessing cars going down? Like, where did that number come from? Or is that just from the sonar hits that you got? No,
that was the initial information that we got as we were arriving on the scene, that number. And that number, again, as I said earlier, has fluctuated, right? That 7 has been a consistent number.
How many agencies are here assisting right now with this recovery?
Dozens. Dozens. I mean, locally, fire department-wise, Baltimore County's here, Howard County's here, Hartford was here, PG was here, Anne Arundel, of course, Baltimore City, and a lot of news agencies are here by virtue of the fact that they may have specialized equipment that we need during an incident.
You've been listening to a news conference with James Wallace, Fire Chief, Baltimore City Fire Department, who told us they have pulled 2 people from the water so far, 1 in good condition, the second now at a trauma center nearby, hurt badly enough they have not debriefed him. They've also been able to locate vehicles in the water using sonar, the chief said. We are joined now by former NTSB Chair Robert Sumwalt. Robert, thank you again for being with us. You were listening along with me. What stood out to you?
Well, Tony, at this point, as they indicated, they're really in a search and rescue phase, and that will have to come first before any sort of NTSB or Coast Guard investigators get involved in this.
You know, Robert, they described the situation as dynamic. They're dealing with tides. It's a search and rescue operation. There's a surface area they're looking at, a subsurface area they're looking at, and also the deck of the ship itself is an area where they might find people. When you think about the scope and the scale of this event, where does it fit in your experience?
Well, I dealt with over 200 accidents when I was at the NTSB, including being the chairman. And this is certainly, first of all, it's a rare event. It's a very sad event. And as said, thoughts and prayers go out for all of those who've been affected. I agree with the police chief there is that the number of casualties is going to be a dynamic number. It's going to change. And unfortunately, I'm afraid it's going to increase.
We heard a question from somebody there at the press conference about the pilot, the driver of this ship that struck a piling. They haven't been able to debrief that pilot, but it sounded like, and we haven't confirmed this, it might be an American who was at the controls there. How does that fit into your approach to investigating this? We might have local people behind the driving of the ship as opposed to an international situation.
Well, you're exactly right. In the United States and across the globe, they use local pilots to direct the navigation of the ship in and out of ports. So there will be a U.S. pilot on board who is giving commands to the helm. And so from international law perspective, I can't tell you anything about that. But what I can tell you is that, yes, there is a U.S. pilot who is on board that ship.
Wow. That deepens the mystery here, Robert. I have to say, at the hour of the morning, they just left port. You can't say that the person who was on that ship did not know the waterways if it's a local person. So we're going to be looking at, adds to the questions we will have. Was it a mechanical problem? Was it human error? Was it something else? Robert Sumwalt, thank you very much for telling us what you know at this early hour. We're going to have much more on this breaking news on CBS Mornings coming up in just about 19 minutes at 7 a.m. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Tony DeCopel in New York.
Story with news that 2 people have been taken out of the water, one with no injuries, the other in serious condition as those massive search and rescue operations continue at this hour.
Hearing the Baltimore County Fire Chief mention that one person who was plucked from the water refused medical service, any medical attention whatsoever after being on that bridge during that collapse. Just incredible to hear. The other person that was brought from the water obviously in critical condition right now, as they mentioned earlier. We're going to continue to follow this story. This happened around 1:30 this morning, that cargo ship hitting the support beam of the Key Bridge just outside of Baltimore, just, again, a quarter of a mile from the port of Baltimore there, just and then leading to this massive bridge collapse this morning. So we'll continue to follow this breaking news for you as we show you more live pictures of the aftermath as the search and rescue continues. We'll bring you the latest updates from Baltimore as soon as they come into our newsroom. You can follow us all morning long here on CBS 2, though.